there, I'm Chris Stashew.
I'm Mike White.
And this is Father Malone.
These deliveries are off the chain today. We are the hosts of Dreams for Sale, a Twilight Zone 1985 podcast. You know, the only one that exists. On this episode, we're here. We're at the end of season 1. It only took us more than 2 years. It's not really our fault. We only talk about one episode a month, and there's 24 episodes. But we're here now, and we're talking about the final 2 segments, A Day in Beaumont and The Last Defender. So A Day in Beaumont and The Last Defender of Camelot both aired April 11th, 1986. A Day in Beaumont is directed by, once again, Philip DeGuerre. It is written by David Gerrold, and it stars Victor Garber and Stacey Nelkin as a couple who sees an alien land.
Or do they?
Bum, bum, bum! Mike, what did you think of this episode?
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I was not a fan of this one. Yeah, I mean, I pretty much saw every twist and turn before it was going to happen. I think it's supposed to be playing, because the special effects are just fucking awful, and I think it's supposed to be like playing on old 50s sci-fi tropes and just trying to throw everything in there. This felt a little Body Snatchers. It felt a little, them. It was like a whole bunch of stuff all kind of thrown into a blender, and we ended up with this thing. And, we talked last month about Shadow Play, which was written by Charles Beaumont, which was a loop episode. And this is a loop episode, too, for no really good reason. I didn't understand why things were the way they were. I'm hoping you guys can explain them to me. The twists didn't necessarily feel like they were earned. In a few words, I wasn't a fan.
You know, for something written by David Gerrold, who, as a massive of the original series of Star Trek, I mean, he wrote The Trouble with Tribbles. I mean, that is considered to be a classic episode of this. He wrote that episode when he was 22, and look, that's a great episode of the show. You know, I've looked at some of the other stuff he's worked on. He worked on Land of the Lost. He wrote The Martian Child. So he has a pedigree of good science fiction writing. This is not one of those things. Mm-mm. Like you said, this is a ham-fisted 50s throwback attempt that is just a waste of time.
But maybe Father Malone absolutely loved it.
No, I did not. The thing is, I actually really wanted to like it. I mean, this cast is crazy with Victor Garber and the always adorable Stacey Nelkin. And I didn't think the writing was all that terrible as far as a send-up of 50s B movies and the original Twilight Zone itself, but, the tone was so wildly off the mark. The music alone was playing everything for laughs. If it could have, I don't know, had they taken it seriously? I don't know, that's maybe asking a lot. But it seems that if it had taken itself more seriously, then it could have been a frightening episode, even though, I don't know. Let me just say, I really wanted to like it, and I was massively disappointed, sort of beginning to end. Not just because the effects were so terrible, not just because the twist was seen from a mile off, but it just felt squandered.
Mm.
It really was. And on top of everything else, you kind of mentioned it in the final, and you mentioned it in the last episode, Mike, that there's, Charles Beaumont, that's the nod to him. But then there's nods to fucking Bradbury, and It Came from Outer Space, and H.G. Wells and Orson Welles.
Yeah.
It feels more of just how much old school stuff can we throw into this? I mean, there's even a town named after Richard Matheson.
It's Ready Player One for boomers.
It kind of is. And somehow it's just as disappointing as Ready Player One, with less misogyny.
What is... So they're on the run from these aliens. If they something, if they take a photo, they see their shadow. Okay, that's kind of cool. Yada yada. The whole town's being taken over by them. They get beamed up in their spaceship. People start to remove their heads, and their giant insect heads underneath. Okay, whatever. What is this whole thing? He actually... It's like a Philip K. Dick kind of twist, right? He actually is one of the insects, but he doesn't believe that he's one of the insects. Is that what I'm getting from this?
It's that he was programmed to not be one.
There's supposed to be like a sleeper cell that they're going to start the invasion of Earth with, and they're training them to do it.
Oh.
But this one has been trained so well that he actually believes he's human.
Okay. Cool. But then it loops.
Which sounds better coming out of my mouth than the episode we got.
Yeah. But then it loops, and I'm like, okay, well, what are we getting in the loop? Is there another guy who's been trained that well?
Yeah, I don't know.
What a waste of a really amazing actor like Victor Garber, right?
Truly.
Are you saying that seriously or not seriously?
I love Victor Garber. He's a great character actor.
Okay, I only know him really from Alias, and I think Alias is dog shit. So,
well, I mean, Alias aside, like, I truly find Victor Garber.
I'm sure you saw Godspell.
Oh yeah, that's true. Who hasn't?
What's funny is I've been listening to the original soundtrack, the Broadway performance of Sweeney Todd for like 20 years, and did not realize that he was the original Anthony.
Wow.
In that show. So yeah, I love Victor Garber. I was shocked at how ill-served he was here. Also, I was shocked that they kept his mid-80s perm when this is clearly supposed to be the 1950s.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that kind of threw me off. There's a movie. Sorry, I keep like going to other sources. Like last episode, I talked about Black Mirror. This one, there's a movie called Top of the Food Chain, also known as Invasion. And they send up 50s sci-fi films, kind of like they're doing here, but they do it so much better. And if folks are interested in this as a concept, I would say check that out. It's hilarious. It's super dry. Like, jokes are just kind of slid in there, and if you're not paying attention, you'll miss them. Really good stuff. And I kept thinking about that while I was watching this, and I was just like, is this supposed to be funny, over the top? Or because it just feels like Garber's like over the top completely all the time. And I know maybe, again, he's kind of Kevin McCarthying it, but Kevin McCarthy wasn't over the top until the very end of Body Snatchers. He wasn't at 11 the entire time.
Well, that's the thing about this episode, right? Is that this episode segment is that it has to like get to that point in the span of 18 minutes.
Yeah, true.
So you get like I mean, you're not wrong. They do it over like the span of like a minute and a half, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, oh, their pinkies are extended. That's the sign. Like, that's the sign that they're aliens. Like, wow, guys, the cheapest option was not always the best option, but it is the option you went with. Because
speaking of cheap options, my favorite part of the entire episode is they have escaped the aliens. He needs to get to a phone to talk to his doctor friend or the editor of the newspaper or whatever. They stop in the middle of the desert. There's a phone set up, and they've taken the sort of press-on letters that you put on your mailbox and written telephone down the side. I'm like, oh, thank God they pointed that out, or I wouldn't know what device he's using here.
Otherwise, the kids today, they wouldn't know what that was.
Oh, true, yeah. What a prescient choice they made back in 86.
They saw Wall Street. They knew what was coming. Everybody's going to have those big, clunky Michael Douglas cell phones.
Totally. The Michael Douglas phone. I think we should just call it that from now on.
I'm so glad, Chris, that you explained the longer pinky thing, because I don't know how I missed that. I just kept seeing them like focus in on the hands, and I was like, what? Is there something on the hand? I was looking for like an indicating mark or something. I didn't realize it was the pinkies. I guess I just wasn't paying attention.
And the best thing about that is that is their obvious flaw, and they all like walk around with their arms folded, showing it off. What a crack infiltration team!
Have you seen over there? And they point with their pinky.
I mean, if you don't stir tea with your pinky out,
that's true. I usually sip it.
What are you doing with your life? I think my favorite moment is when Stacey Nelkin takes her head off. I laughed out loud.
Yeah. Speaking of that, like, how many unmaskings did we actually need?
Oh, I know.
Yeah, an endless progression of them pulling at their foam rubber latex appliances.
Yeah. It was like, okay, we get it. They're like, as soon as one of them did it and the others didn't scream in horror, I was like, okay, they're all insects. And then when they did it again, and oh, there's the three guys back there. They need to do it too. It's like, oh my God, really?
I wish they had cut to other parts of the ship where everyone is doing it.
It's like all the unmaskings in Mission Impossible 2. Just like, we had this effect in the first one. We're going to do it a lot.
A lot.
Lord.
I wish that this segment was better. I think we all wish that this segment was better because it has the ability to be good, and I think its heart is in the right place, but I don't think it has anything to say.
No.
But hey, you get to see Stacey Nelkin take her head off, and there's a bug head underneath, so at least there's that. Spooky scary. Oh, boy. Let's talk about the final segment of Season 1, The Last Defender of Camelot.
Once upon a time, there was a realm of myth and magic, a high, bright dream that shimmered briefly and then was gone, leaving only memories and one ageless, weary, slightly tarnished hero who proved at last that wisdom and valor go hand in hand on Earth, in Camelot, and in the Twilight Zone.
So this segment is directed by Jeannot Swark. So it was close. Jeannot Swark. It is written, like we've mentioned, by George R.R. Martin. He actually adapted the short story of the same name by Roger Zelazny, which is also called The Last Defender of Camelot. And it's about, shockingly, The Last Defender of Camelot. But it has Richard Kiley in it, so we spared no expense.
It's got one hell of a cast. I mean, Jenny Agutter, Norman Lloyd, the kid, whoever he is. But, I mean, it's got a really good cast. It's got a solid pedigree. I mean, Zelazny is like one of the people that you hold up in the pantheon. Like if we're doing, not Ralph, who's the Martin's ABC of science fiction authors, he would definitely be the Z-spot. So it's really good as far as that goes. I love Jenny Agutter, and anytime she's on screen is great, but she's on screen way too briefly.
But Richard Kiley's on screen a lot, so there's that.
Yeah, I think everything is a little on screen briefly here. It feels like a 2-hour movie they crammed into 22 minutes. And so, like you were saying, Mike, like it does have a good pedigree. I think the writing is good. I think all the performances are good. I think the direction with the the limitations of the visual effects, which are god awful, like weigh it down. And speaking of the cast, like the group of punks that met as Richard Kiley at the beginning, it was Anthony LaPaglia, Don Stark, the fucking Laura Prepon's dad on the 70s show, and John Cameron Mitchell is the kid, the Hedwig and the Angry Inch actor.
Thank you.
So yeah, like a crazy amount of talent on screen, including Jenny Agutter, who is so fucking fantastic in everything. And it just felt like really rushed, and like the payoffs weren't great at all. I mean, I do want to say about this particular episode, it reminded me of a time, it seemed, before deconstructionism took over everything. Like, this seemed like an interesting sort of take on the Arthurian legend, at a time when people really weren't doing it. I think now everything has been deconstructed into the fucking ground, but, like, that too is another element that I liked about the episode. It's just that it ends up kind of not, all those great things kind of add up to nothing in the end.
I can't believe I didn't recognize John Cameron Mitchell. I even saw his name in the credits, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. John Cameron Mitchell's in this. That's nice. And then it just completely went out of my brain. The kid that was Tom, was it Tom, right? The punk, whoever. I'm Tom, just like, very punk name. I was like, okay, just did not connect with him that was John Cameron Mitchell. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. What'd you think, Chris?
You know, I think, like both of y'all have said, and I will pretty much echo it completely, it is an episode segment that, once again, it has a good idea. There's a great idea. I mean, again, the deconstruction of these classical kind of folklore and myths, I'm all for it. I love it. I love kind of taking them and putting them in a new setting or new time period. I think that that's really smart. But then it doesn't do anything with it. It just tells the story straightforward. And I think my issue with this segment is more of, it doesn't feel like a Twilight Zone segment. It just feels like you said, Mike, a movie. A actual, like, this is an entire concept you could turn into a film. Like a feature-length presentation. And I kind of don't know why anyone hasn't. I mean, it has an interesting plot. It has an interesting story. It deviates from the short story. But at the same time, it does have something to say. And I think it has something to say about kind of, age and longevity and stuff like that. But I don't think it does anything. And, it has, like you said, Richard Kiley and all kinds of really talented actors. And you just kind of wonder, why cast all these great actors if you're just not going to give them anything to do?
Yeah.
But what a fight, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Yeah, the sets and stuff, I was just like, oh man, be careful. You don't want to knock over that huge granite rock that you're next to. You don't want to, I don't want a reproduction of Stonehenge that looks like it's in danger of being knocked over by a dwarf.
That was meant to be feet, not inches, okay? I was just doing it the way you wrote it on that cocktail napkin.
That Stonehenge is confused as Nigel.
The fact that Stonehenge looks better in Spinal Tap than it does in this is a testament to how fucking bad this looks. And
A for effort, but come on.
Yeah. And I would like to go back and read the story that this was based upon, because I could see this being fleshed out and having a lot more stuff to it. I don't know if Martin took it and pared it down, or if he tried to bolster it. Is this one of those things like the Devil's Alphabet, where it was 6 paragraphs that we turned into an episode? Or was this like a novelette or something where it was like, and then we get Tom's story, and he and Sir Lancelot will go off and they have adventure, then they have to come back and Merlin's actually still alive or whatever. But it could have been a lot more. This could have been, what was that one with Patrick Stewart, like the kid from Camelot or whatever that was? Just like, okay, this is a pretty good movie, and they're kind of redoing some of the Camelot stuff, but this had those building blocks, but they just do things with them.
And look, this is the probably only opportunity I will ever get to talk about this particular person, so I'm going to take this tiny opportunity that we've been given to talk about George R.R. Martin. I think he's wildly over me personally. And I've seen this comparison of him being the American Tolkien. Whoever said that is token the fuck up, because if you think George R.R. Martin can hold a candle to J.R.R. Tolkien, you're smoking some long bottom leaf, my dude, because that is an unfair comparison. He doesn't bring anything to this that the novel didn't already do. The novelette didn't already. So I know that might be an unpopular opinion, and roast me on the internet if you want, but George R.R. Martin, not a huge fan.
I don't think there's really anything wrong with the script here other than overreaching. I do feel like if this had just been an episode of Lancelot reuniting with Morgan Le Fay for a conversation for 20 minutes, then it would have been pretty good, and I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more. But instead they decided that they were going to go for the whole grand sweep of what it should have been. And to connect it to J.R.R. Tolkien for 1 second, clearly Peter Jackson must have seen this when he decided that the idea of wizards shooting lasers at each other is a silly idea, and he didn't want to pursue it.
I was disappointed when we recently talked about Lord of the Rings that Saruman and Gandalf didn't shoot lasers at each other. If that's not what I want from my fictional fantasy stories, I don't know what it is.
It could.
Look, clearly they could have done it better now, but look what they were doing then.
Could have been as good as the Emperor with this Force lightning.
Yeah. It's so good, in fact.
It was on par.
I don't want to, I don't want to besmirch George R.R. Martin, because he has written some very popular books. He's done more popular things than I will ever do in my entire lifetime. But again, you put your work out there, people are going to have a opinion about it.
Hey, if you write night flyers, you get a free pass from me.
Wow. Whatever, bro. If you write night flyers, that's what you're going with. Okay.
Yes, that's what I'm going with.
That's fine. Hey, you know what? I can't tell if you're being serious or if you're joking.
I'm completely joking.
I would hope so, because Night Flyers is a fucking mess. But hey, you know what? It's made by George R.R. Martin, so we must adapt it because he's hot right now. Nobody cares. Nobody tuned in. Nobody watched.
Are we talking about the original movie or the television series?
I'm talking about the original movie from, 97?
Oh, okay. Was it that late? I don't think so.
No, I think you're right. I think it was more... Oh, God. When was that?
It was like 87. Michael Praed was in that.
87.
Who was Robin of Locksley.
Yeah. 87.
Yeah, and then they redid the TV show, like a couple of years ago, and it was not good.
Yeah, I got about maybe 4 episodes into that, and I was like, yeah, that's enough.
I mean, look, and Game of Thrones and what everyone, what everyone's opinion will vary on that show. No thing. And this is, I mean, again, the short novelette, I'm actually probably going to go and read it because I would like to see how good it is, because undoubtedly the novelette must be pretty good. I would, because again,
it's like Mike said at the top. Zelazny's fantastic. You're not going to do yourself a disservice in reading him.
Exactly. Little trivia for you. Zelazny wrote Lord of Light, which is they were going to build a theme park of it, and I can't remember if that was actual that they're going to build a theme park of it, or if that's what they were claiming to do. No, I think they were going to build a theme park of it, and I think it was creating a movie of Lord of Light, which was what they actually did in Iran to get the hostages out. That was the fake movie. Was it Argo?
Oh,
Argo.
That's funny.
So that was actually, so you can see a little bit of Lord of Light stuff in that.
Huh.
One of the few things I know about Zelazny.
This podcast is both deriding and educational.
I didn't come here to learn anything.
I only came to listen to these guys' terrible opinions on things that I love so I can get mad at them. Welcome to the Chronicles from the Crypt podcast, y'all. Welcome to the Kolchak podcast, y'all. Oh, fuck. So that's the end of season 1. Holy shit, we're here. Yeah, boy, I still can't kind of believe it. It's, again, it's 24 episodes. We only watch an episode a month, so that's 2 years of episodes. I am curious, starting with you, Father Malone, if you had a takeaway from this season, what has been your favorite segment from this season? Since we should probably do a little bit of a quick little wrap-up to kind of put a little bow on this first season of the show.
Yeah, hands down, my favorite episode is Wordplay. I think a smart, thoughtful, prescient Twilight Zone episode that really felt like what a new 1980s version of the Twilight Zone ought to be. It felt an echo of the original series while sort of standing on its own merits, and it scares the shit out of me to this day. So that's my favorite segment. I can't even say the whole episode is good. That segment alone is worth the price of admission for this entire season.
Yeah,
what about you, Mike?
I hate to sound like a copycat, but yeah, I mean, that was the segment that I remembered from the original watch. I think the two that I most remembered were Wordplay and The Shadow Man. And yeah, okay, I take it back. 3, the other one was To See the Invisible Man. I'd say To See the Invisible Man still holds up, but I think Wordplay is still the best segment of this entire first season.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Grandma.
All right.
I just really love that kid and his terrible narration.
I thought you might. You might go there.
Not me.
Not to echo y'all, because you guys have given a very good answer. Obviously, For me, I'm going to go with Dealer's Choice. I mean, look, Dan Hedaya as the devil is amazing. You have M. Emmett Walsh, Garrett Morris, Morgan Freeman of all people. I think it has that like 80s sensibility to it, and it's tongue in cheek enough, but there are stakes. It's also directed by Wes Craven, and it's a lot of fun. It is a genuinely fun segment of this, and I love it. But at the same time, I mean, Wordplay is amazing. And so is Shatterday. The opening salvos, as Father Malone likes to say, were so strong, and then it's just a wet fart at the end of the season. Just constant decline in quality. It's really disappointing.
They did end on a thud, but at least when you say, what was your favorite segment, I have to think about it, because there are enough that I feel, confident in recommending this entire season.
Yeah. We need more Eyes of Newton. We need more... I guess maybe The Uncle Devil show, maybe? We need more.
I mean, it was short. Definitely. It was short enough.
Yeah, we need like shorter, punchier stuff that is going to feel like it's Twilight Zone. Because like with this one, A Day in Beaumont, I mean, it could have been it could have paid more homage to the classic stuff where it's like, here's a man trapped alone in a city and we don't know what's going on. In this one, there's no real question of what's going on. Okay, it's an alien invasion. The only real twist is, oh, he's actually part of it and this happens all the time or whatever. Last Defender of Camelot, like you said, did not feel like a Twilight Zone segment.
To your point, Mike, and I know Father Malone hates us bringing this up, but the 2000 version of Twilight Zone does a very good job of not showing its hand too early. Because that was always part of what made Twilight Zone great, is there is a little bit of them withholding a little bit of the information so you can kind of get to know the situation and the narrative with the character, as opposed to them just like looking at the camera and being like, I don't know if this is real or not. Like, okay.
Right.
All right. Fine. No, you don't know. I don't know. If you don't know, it's probably not real. So like, as much as as much as we've derided other Twilight Zone reboots, this show could use a little bit of that, because again, these last two episodes are just, I'm not talking segments. These last two episodes completely just show their hands up front. They're just like, yep, there you go.
Let me spoon feed it to you.
Yeah. And like, we weren't stupid in 85 when people were watching it, and we're really not stupid now. You don't have to hold our hands. And if you think you need to, you just don't. You don't need to. Give the audience something to chew on. Give them a little something to think about. Don't just, like you said, hold their hand and tell them what they need to understand at the go. Because it's lazy story.
And the episodes or segments that I responded to most favorably this season kind of eschewed the entire twist. Like, I know people remember the Twilight Zone for its twist endings, but like, the best ones seem to not be predicated on that at all. Like,
yeah,
wordplay starts with the problem. Like, and I mean, it isn't clear immediately, but it isn't like at the end, oh, by the way, here's the twist. So like, they don't need it. And the fact that they're still kind of like trying to force it out there is crazy to me.
And it's a bummer. It's a bummer. But hey, you know what? We have another season to look forward to. It's the only other season with Charles Aidman doing the narration, but it's only 11 episodes long. So we have a lot less to watch. And there seems to be also a lot less of 3-part episodes. There's only 2 3-parters, which is a bummer, because I think for me, the most exciting stuff we've watched have been these short, little quick segments, because it puts the creators, both director and writer, in a box that they can't really get out of, so they have to figure out how to work within it. And I really like that, and I find that to be exciting. But I don't think we're going to be getting a whole lot of that next season, because there aren't very many short segments, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it's a drag, considering Dreams for Sale is one of those.
Yeah, and so is the Uncle Devil show. And so is the not Little Boy Lost, Children's Zoo, which is another great segment.
Absolutely. And in each of those, like if there's a twist, just give us a 8-minute segment, and because that's the only thing you're trying to do is pull the wool over our eyes for, however many minutes. Like, don't belabor it and stretch something out just so we can have this twist that we've already seen from the opening frame.
No, that's Chronicles from the Crypts. That's our purview. That's what we have to deal with. is that
that's true?
Yeah, twists that are so obvious they're you can see them from the first frame of. So until the next time we talk about Twilight Zone, which will be us talking about the first episode of season 2, another George R.R. Martin segment, The Once and Future King, and A Saucer of Loneliness. Until then, where can people find you, Michael?
You can find me over at the Projection Booth Podcast, which is available at projectionboothpodcast.com.
What about you, Father Malone?
You can hear me over on Dark Destinations, my travelogue to fictional towns. You can hear that if you go to fathermalone.com. And you can also hear me with Chris talking about Tales from the Crypt over on Chronicles.
I do want to point out how insane it is to me that fathermalone.com was not taken.
I know.
Me too.
Lucky you.
Right?
My own name is taken as a URL, but whoa, Father Malone, a fictional character's name, is not taken.
Wait.
Please explain that shit to me.
You're saying that Father Malone's real name isn't Father Malone? First name Father,
No,
last name Malone?
That's absolutely accurate. My name is Father Malone.
Okay.
I thought it was actually Father Mal 1.
Oh, that was just for a little while. I was trying something out.
As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Christmas Claus. You can also find me on a couple other podcasts. Father Malone's mentioned it. Mike and I do a podcast about Rankin and Bass movies called Rankin on Bass, and we talk about Barney Miller on the life and times of Captain Barney Miller. I also do a podcast about movies called The Culture Cast. As always, big thanks to Roxy, Drive, and Neutron Dreams for the music. You can find this podcast at twilightzone85.com, and we'll catch you on the next episode.